going through the ranking of Notre Dame's position groups going into the spring. Always a fun read that Lou puts together for blueandgold.com and our Blue and Gold Illustrated magazine. We'll go through each of them, and Lou, just tell us why you ranked each position where you did. Number 10, cornerback, and I believe this is back-to-back years that they were at least 9 or 10.
Yeah, and last year we ranked him 10th, and that was before Nick McLeod was able to come in as a graduate transfer. I believe it was sometime in May. So
Yep.
that really was a huge boost to the cornerback position. It didn't make them great, but it at least supplied some much needed experience in place of Troy Pride. And you have a bunch of candidates, but there's no one really established. In the cornerback position, I think right now, Mike, at Notre Dame, the last time somebody was drafted either in the first or second round in that position was Bobby Taylor back in 1995. So
Yikes.
we're going on a quarter century or so. That's been a position of when people talk about the gap between Alabama, Ohio State, Clemson, and the other schools, that's one of the positions, along with wide receiver and cornerback, where it's been more acute for Notre Dame. And there's a lot of candidates, and I think Philip Riley might be the only one who is classified as a four-star in the group there. But you have some experience with Tariq Bracy. Clarence Lewis was a very pleasant surprise last year as a freshman, and hopefully somebody like a Cam Hart can emerge. But that's a position that I would say, once again, has the most question marks going into a season.
Moving along, number 9, receiver, and talking again about the edges. Wide receiver and cornerback kind of go hand in hand there.
Yeah, and Brian Kelly said this even 2 years ago. I remember when I had a one-on-one interview with him for our 2019 yearbook. He's not going to necessarily, uh, you know, what he emphasized was from 2012, that game against Alabama, which they lost 42-14. Notre Dame closed the gap when it came to offensive line and defensive line. We've seen it in the draft, we've seen it in performance and production. It's become an NFL pipeline there, and a lot of those positions. Notre Dame can hold its own as far as in the trenches. And they've also had 3 Butkus Award winners in the last 9 years at the linebacker position. And you have a great safety now with Kyle Hamilton, top of the line there. But what he mentioned back in 2019, it's on the edges, the speed positions, the game breaking areas there, which specifically speak to corner and wide receiver. And we talked about this on a previous show, but your leading receiver coming back this year was a former quarterback recruit, Avery Davis, who also was auditioned at running back and cornerback as well before settling into the slot position. So this is an area where, again, there's a lot of names, there's a lot of potential, but there just hasn't been enough production yet where you have that comfort saying, oh yeah, they're set there.
And number 8 is quarterback. I thought this was an interesting ranking. There's plenty of uncertainty because you don't know what you have with Jack Cohn. He wasn't really able to play much at all, if any, this past season at Wisconsin. So, but still, he's a pretty talented player. And hey, maybe
Yes.
he's even an upgrade over Ian Book. We don't know yet. So tell us why you put quarterback at number 8.
Well, it's not really saying that quarterback is lacking. There's talent there. It speaks well to the program that the other positions are considered stronger there. But the reality has been that other than Deshaun Kaiser in the last 11 years, there really hasn't been that quarterback figure that you look at that puts Notre Dame over the top, that Heisman Trophy type of candidate. I think one of the biggest myths that often get perpetuated is, hey, if you sign as a quarterback with Notre Dame, you're automatically a Heisman Trophy candidate. Well, the only one I think since 1990 who's been in the voting was Brady Quinn in 2005 and 2006. So that's just a position where not only do you have a new guy coming in with Jack Cohn, who's got to learn everything, and his experience is a huge, but behind him, there's nobody who's played any meaningful snap, really.
Number 7, the offensive line. Another talented unit for sure, but another one that we don't know a ton about going into the spring.
You have to replace four new starters, and that's not going to be easy for any coach. And the fifth, Jared Patterson, who knows? I mean, is he going to be in at center? Yeah, he's not going to be able to practice, from what I understand, this spring. He had the foot surgery in November. I think it's a Lisfranc, which takes a while to bounce back from. So this is not a question about talent at all. I mean, you go down that line there, the 13 scholarship players that are available this spring. I mean, everyone, virtually everyone was on a top 250. I think most have been in the top 100 as well at one point or another. This is not at all an issue of offensive line. Offensive line and tight ends are the two easiest positions to recruit at Notre Dame.
Yeah.
It's a matter of just finding the right spots and then developing the chemistry and the overall cohesion with that entire group, especially when you have four new starters coming in and maybe a fifth at a new position.
Yeah, I'm in agreement there with you, Lou. Number 6, kind of one of these that people be like, "Oh yeah, that's a position group is special teams." Quick thoughts on the special teams, Lou?
They've quietly been very efficient in coverage, kicking, punting. Um, the missing element has been maybe a game-breaking play or two in the course of a game with the return game.
Sure.
They've had some game-changing plays. Isaiah Foskey blocking a punt against Stanford in 2019 that totally changed the game around. The coverage units have been really outstanding, both kick and punt. Now the question is, can a Chris Tyree on kick returns or maybe a Lorenzo Styles Jr. on
Mm-hmm.
punt returns have that element of game-breaking skills? Because Jay Bramblett has been a productive punter with his hang time, not necessarily a boomer, but he averaged, Notre Dame was in the top 20 in net punting last year, and they gave up only 44 yards in punt return yardage heading into the championship game. So they're very impressive there. Jonathan Dorr tailed off a little bit at the end, but even in the ACC championship game, kicked a 51-yarder early. He's made a lot of clutch kicks here. He's in his third year as a starter. I think it's a strong group. And when you have a nucleus with Jack Kaiser, Isaiah Pryor, Bo Bauer on the coverage units, that's sometimes overlooked. But it should be a good unit. And whether the return game can take them from above average to supreme is the question.
So you have a tie at number 4 with safety and tight end. Why don't you tell us why you had those two tied there?
Because both of those positions feature maybe the two best pro prospects, right, even right now on the Notre Dame roster. Kyle Hamilton, of course, at the safety position, and then Michael Mayer at the tight end position. I mean, both of those guys, the minute they walked in, they had first round written all over them. And when you have that aircraft carrier type of figure to carry you into a season, that is significant. Now, the caveat is, boy, if there's an injury there to either of those people, then that position group likely falls some. But when you have one of the nation's premier talents at that position, that's a darn good start. And then, tight end, George Takis, Kevin Bauman, there's people there who are fully capable to be strong complements, just like at safety. You lost Kyle Hamilton for an entire half because of a targeting call at North Carolina. And both Houston Griffith and DJ Brown acquitted themselves very well against an outstanding offense. So there's ability there, but it's the star power with those two figures that helps them put them up there.
So one I'm really interested to talk to you about is number 3, Lou. You got the linebacker position. It loses Jeremiah Usu-Koramoah. Personally, the thing about these rankings is that everyone has an opinion where they can rip away, but at the end of the day, they're not the ones making the top 10. So if you want to make your top 10, leave us a 5-star review on on podcast, and leave us a YouTube comment. Tell us what your top 10 would be, and even your biggest position battles as well. But number 3 certainly is interesting because Jeremiah Usu-Koramoah leaves. But you still have some talented players return. So tell us about number 3.
I think it's a depth factor here, Mike, that I like the most, that I put them up there. And look, we just talked about star power with safety and tight end, and boy, did Jeremiah bring it at the linebacker position. Good chance that he will be the first Notre Dame linebacker since Bob Crable, a Hall of Famer in college, since 1982, to be a first-round pick at linebacker. But I like the combination with Drew White and Bo Bauer, a couple of veterans in the middle. I think both Maris Lufa and Shane Simon can grow at that will linebacker position. Plus, you have Jack Kaiser, who showed flashes here, and maybe Jack Kaiser could become the answer at the rover position as well. I know Clark Lee from day one was really, really high on what Jack Kaiser can provide there at that position. And, both Mike Elko and Clark Lee were so good at evaluating and identifying a talent level that is specific to a position. And I think maybe Jack might be that type of guy. Maybe Isaiah Pryor, but we talked about him maybe moving to the safety position. So there's a lot to work with there. Hopefully, Paul Moala, somebody who has competed with Jeremiah and will be a senior this year. Hopefully, he comes back from that Achilles injury last October to become a factor there too. But I like the numbers there, and that's not even including in the fall bringing in Prince Colley, who, oh, by the way, he was the Butkus Award winner at the high school level last year. So that's why it's maybe a bit of a leap of a faith without Jeremiah, but I just like the experience and the numbers factor there.
I like it, Lou. And in number 2, the defensive line, which of course means running back is number 1. So tell us about the rankings there, running back of 1 and defensive line number 2 of ranking Notre Dame's position groups going into the spring.
Well, defensive line we had them number 2 last year too, behind the offensive line, which returned 114 career starts, which was the most ever at Notre Dame. I just like the system and the culture that Mike Elston has at that defensive line position. Last year, I believe they had 11 different guys who had at least 141 snaps, which translates to about 12, 15 a game. Which takes years ago, you used to see Sheldon Day or Isaac Rochelle, both of them who are in the NFL. They were taking 60, 70, sometimes even 80 snaps in a ball game. And then at the end of the year, Notre Dame really struggled in November. There was a period there where they were 9-12 over, I think, 5 years in November. But now they've been undefeated the last 3 years. And I think a big part of that is that they've had such a strong rotation along the defensive line where the threshold is generally considered about 50 snaps, and no one has surpassed that. I think Ade Ogundiji had about 48 per game or something like that. But Kurt Heinisch, Myron Tungalovoa-Mosa, Jacob Lacey, Howard Cross, Jason Adamalola. You just have a lot of guys, Riley Mills, and then Isaiah Foskey, Justin Adamalola, the twin. There's so many players there that you can rotate. Now, maybe outside of Isaiah Foskey, there's not that one, figure that the pro scouts look at and say, hey, that could be a first day or second day pick. but collectively, it's a really good group, and I think Mike Elston has built a great culture there.
And then running back number one, Kyron Williams, Chris Tyree. Uh, this was a unit who you probably had last year. What, around? I would imagine 7 or 8. Now it's number one,
I had him ninth
9.
behind the cornerback last year, and that was again before Nick McCall. Look, it was a situation last year. You had 5 guys, and they still brought in May Trevor Spates from Stanford as a potential grad transfer. Now he didn't pass his physical, so he never ended up on the roster. But it was sort of like at this time last year, we were saying, what's going to happen at running back? Who's going to emerge? What a difference a year makes, Mike. I
Yeah,
mean, you have Kyron Williams. We're talking about him now going into his junior year. Somebody who had 4 carries for 26 yards as a freshman makes all ACC as a sophomore. And suddenly we're talking about him. You know what? He has another year like this. He could turn pro as a junior. You have Chris Tyree, an exciting game breaker, came in with high expectations, top 100 recruit at the running back position, immediately became number 2, showed that explosiveness on occasion there, can become a factor also out of the backfield like Kyron Williams. Sibo Flemister is a pretty darn good option as a senior, as a number 3 back there. He's had some strong moments. And in years past, Mike, an Audric Estime, a Logan Diggs, they were needed right away.
right.
They're going to have a hard time just breaking into the 3 deep this season. So that room has really picked up the last couple of years under Lance Taylor.